So if you're like me, sometimes I can get a bee in my bonnet and there's only a couple of compositions that I want to get, and I'll load the camera with a roll of 36 film, if I'm not bulk loading that is, and go out and get a couple of frames that I want, and then I end up generally shooting the rest of the film on stuff that I don't really want. But it's a great way of saving the rest of the film for another time. If you've got a dark bag or a closet or a dark room in your house, or even if you've got a dark room, you don't have to waste all of that film. So I took my wife shopping the other day. She went shopping and I went off for a little walk with this digital black and white camera. It was raining and I thought it'd be nice to get a few photographs in the rain, but as I was walking along the pier I just stared at the dodgems. They've been there for years, and so I took a couple of pictures of the dodgems, not really thinking much of it apart from compositions and lighting. And then when I got back, there was two particular ones that really stood out, and I thought, my God, they would look really nice on film. The next day, early in the morning, I loaded the Nikon FM3A with a 28mm lens to replicate the same 28mm lens on that digital. I just wanted two photographs, exactly what I'd shot on the digital the day before. And here's one of them here, the dodgems. I'll come back to that in a moment. This is a darkroom print that I made. So I've come down here, look, and it's so early in the morning, none of the dodgems are lined up where there was the other day. Oh, that's the picture I wanted. But they're all lined up over there. So let's see if I can get a picture of these dodgems over there. And the reason I'm taking a photograph is one day these dodgems won't exist, they'll be gone, there'll be new fangled dangle ones there. And then at least I've got this old nostalgic photograph, or print maybe, of these old dodgems. So I'm all set up ready to go. I've got the Nikon FM3A. I've got this little tiny Manfrotto tripod, nice and light to carry about. That's important because I've only got 100 speed film inside, and I've just done some metering. It's given me half a second, so I'll have to put the timer on because I haven't got my cable release. I just put the timer on, let the clockwork do its thing and take the photograph. But this is the composition I've got. A little bit different than what I had the other day. It's important for me to get the £2 sign in. One day that might change to £10, who knows. There's another sign at the back, says no bumping, go one way round. And I'm kind of looking over these dodgems. And because there's no one here, I've got an opportunity to take a couple more compositions before I leave. So let's get this one shot in and we'll have a look. So I've just set the timer, press the button, let it do its thing. Done. Just done another composition on my F11. The timer's running, and I've just got those lights at the top of the frame on this photograph. Sorry about the camera work. I'm really wedged into this corner trying to take these shots. So we've got another composition here. Looking, I've got this in the frame, this part, the front wheel, all them wheels. I've got the little sign up there that says safety, definitely no head-on bumping, and a £2 sign. Take the shot. So that's it, just from a little bit of inquisitiveness, I suppose, from taking the digital camera out the other day. I just thought I've got to come back and do this again on film, because that way I can get in the darkroom and make what I would say to myself is a proper print rather than an inkjet print. Shoot it on film, got the negative to keep, and who knows, in years to come, God knows what's going to happen with those dodgems. They might not be there, or they might change the cars. Certainly the price will change. So I've got this nostalgic photograph. They weren't quite what I'd expected, because the other day I kind of liked that composition. I thought they'd be lined up like that again, but they wasn't. But just in a different, lined up differently, I suppose. But I took a few shots anyway, all at what was I, F11. I was on F11. I took those shots. So let's get back. We'll develop the film. I need to cut the film. Let's go this way, you can see me. I need to cut the film out of the camera, which I'll do in the light bag, and then develop it in Rodinal, what I need, and then the rest of the film I'll just put in a box in a fridge and use it next time that I get any ideas on. That way I'm not wasting my film. Oh look, I've gone dark. But the thing is, I didn't want to waste a whole roll of film. Now, I could have gone down there, taken me a couple of shots, and then banged out the rest of this roll on stuff that I didn't really need. And generally what I tend to do is get the start of the film and load it onto the take-up spool like so it's just hanging out. And then I'll put the whole camera into a changing bag, or go into my dark room, or into a closet indoors, or even sometimes under the duvet. Before I had the dark bag and the changing, the dark room and a changing bag, I used to go under the duvet and do it. It was fine. So once that's all in the dark, you can then pull the film out into the camera and close the back and advance to frame number 1. None of that's been hit by light, so then you're pretty much good to go off and shoot straight away. And then when you come back, you put the whole camera back into the changing bag, or wherever you are, where it's light tight, advance 1 frame, open the back of the camera, cut that out, put that into your developing tank for developing, and then take the film out, put it inside the canister, and then pop that in your fridge. And you can use that again for another day. None of that has been exposed to light, so you can repeat the process. The only tricky part is when you do want to repeat the process, you have to go back in the dark. You have to get your scissors out and make a little shape that sticks into the take-up spool in your camera. But that's pretty easy once you know what you're doing. And there's some of us that bulk load, so you'll just load a few frames onto the cassette and go out and take your photographs and come back. But if you haven't got a bulk loader, or you haven't got the film for that certainly, and you don't want to use all your 36 frames on a couple of shots that you've got this bee in your bonnet about, you can easily come back and cut the film out of the camera and save the rest for a rainy day. And you might think to yourself, you're going to be using a lot of developer just for a few frames of film, but I use Rodinal here, so it's only 8 millilitres of Rodinal, which is much more cost effective than, say, if I was using D76 or X-Tol or something like that, 1 part to 1 part. Well, you might say to yourself, I'll just leave the film inside the camera and shoot it whenever I need to, but for me that would take a month for Sundays, and I use my cameras often, so I'd rather do this and put it in the fridge and use it another time. So we've got a changing bag, need to put the developing tank in there, need to put the reel that the piece of film's going to go on. That's where the film's going to go once I've taken it out of the camera, the rest of the roll, which I'll be putting back in the fridge later on for another time. Obviously there's the camera, that's all switched off, so there's no lights or anything going to come on the camera when I'm taking the film out. And obviously important pair of scissors to cut the film off. In it goes, seal the bag up so no light can get in there, and then get doing me thing. So I took one of the negatives that I liked into the darkroom and started to make a print. I needed to start making some tests. At a 2.5 grade filter, look how dark it was in there. I couldn't get nothing out of it. This was what, 10 seconds I think, just a hunch. So that was obviously no good. So then I had to start playing with contrast filters. You can see from my inscribed contrast 5 seconds, and then I started split grading, contrast 0, 5 seconds, contrast 5 for 5 seconds. And what these contrast filters do, it just enables me to control the contrast on the print. So I started off with a contrast 0 just to build up the highlights, and then contrast 5 just to boost the blacks a little tiny bit. And I'll just show you the prints I ended up with. So this is my first print, and with this print I needed to then use this as a test to see the whole area. And then you can see my inscribings here where I need to add a little bit more time here or do a bit of dodging there. So this was the whole print here. So everything's fine. All I needed to do was a little tiny bit of burning down this area, a little bit of dodging over this area, and also a little bit of dodging on this car because this was coming out quite dark. I wanted this car to stand out. And then I had to do some burning around this highlight area here where the sun was coming through, which is quite acceptable, but I just wanted to tame that down a little tiny bit. And with the next print you can now see where I've done a bit more burning at the bottom, a little bit of dodging over this side, a bit more dodging on the car, and I've tried to burn in the highlights, but it wasn't enough. The highlights are still quite bright on these cars, so I needed to do that a little tiny bit more, just to allow a bit more light over this side using a burn tool or a little burn card. And I came out with the final print, which I was happy with. There it is there. So all those inscribings on the print is exactly what I've done here. Burning down here, a bit of dodging here, a bit of dodging on this car, and a lot more burning here, and also down in this corner. If I put them side by side, you can see from the first one what that burning in has done for me. So I wanted to keep the highlights because that's where the light was coming through, but I didn't want it as bright as this. So you can see I've toned it down nicely with some burning with my hands in the darkroom. And then I started working on the Dodgem sign. I wasn't actually over impressed with these, to be honest with you. The digital one I thought looked really cool, but when I started making a print, I realised I wasn't over keen on it. So you can see it's quite dark, the sign there. And then I did another print there. This time the sky's a little bit lighter. This is all lighter. So I ended up with a final print, which is this one there. But I'll just burn the sky in a little tiny bit, dodge this board because that was, you can see the board's too dark. That needs to be lightened up a little tiny bit where the sign is. So I just dodged this area, burnt this area and burnt the sky in a little bit more. And that one's come out nice, but I don't think it's one that I'm going to frame. I just like the other one. I'd like to have put them both together, but maybe I will. I don't know. What do you guys think? And this was the final print that I liked. So I'm going to frame this one. I don't know why, just when I shot this on digital, I just thought, man, that looks so nice, but it's not for me to go and inkjet print it. I haven't got an inkjet printer. My mate's got a really good one. I could go and see him, and I usually give him a tenner or whatever for him to make me a nice print on inkjet. But it wouldn't have floated my boat as much as film. It's strange, isn't it? You go out and you do something on digital, which is so much easier, and then the next day you go out and do something which is a lot harder. It took me ages in the darkroom to try and get this print, but I'm glad that I got there, and this is the print that I'm going to frame and put on my wall indoors. I did do the other one. I thought that might complement it quite well, the two of them together, with the Dodgem. Which one is it? This one here. With the Dodgem sign, and you notice the way I've composed it as well, just coming off from the corner and going down that way with these light bulbs streaking across the top. I thought it was a nice composition, but looking at it, I'm not going to frame it for my house. I thought the two would go quite well, like I showed you in the example, but I don't think I'm going to frame this one. I'm just going to have this one framed. But yeah, it's a good way to save your film if you've got a bee in your bonnet and you want to go out and shoot something, you get an idea. But like most of us, we end up shooting the whole roll around the area, and generally it's just those first few frames that we want to make a print of, or to scan, or to share online or whatever. But I find that's a really good way to conserve my film, is to just cut out what I need, all in the dark, and then put the rest of it in the fridge for another time when I want to do something similar. So I hope you enjoyed that video, guys. I hope it's given you a little idea of how I save my film sometimes. Sometimes I even shoot one frame, just literally load a strip of film in the back of the camera, in the dark obviously, go and shoot what I want, just one frame, come back, and then I'll use the dark tank, the container for the film to develop in. So I'll put the developer in there and literally develop in this. I'll put a link in the description if you want to see how I do that, but that's worked for me in the past as well. But of course you are going to waste a few frames if you're going to do it this way, but not as many as shooting 30 odd photographs of stuff that you don't even want. But like I said, I'll put that in the fridge for another time when I get a bee in my bonnet. So anyway guys, thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed that video. Have a great Easter weekend, whatever you're up to. Don't eat too much because you'll end up getting the shits. I'll catch you next time.